The smile on his face vanished, erased in a single instant as he read the first line. Have you ever watched a mask fall and realized you were locked in a room with the monster that was hiding behind it? It started as a favor. The kind of favor that settles in your gut like cold dread, but you do it anyway. My friend Stephanie, who had become a ghost of herself, asked me to deliver the divorce papers to her husband, Greg. She couldn't do it. She was already in hiding, terrified of a man I only knew from summer barbecues and holiday parties. I know he has a temper, she'd insisted over the phone, her voice thin and reedy. But he's different at work. He's in control there. It's the safest place to do it. Her fear felt borrowed, something I was holding for her, but it wasn't my own. Not yet. By the time I arrived at his downtown office, the floor was silent. The evening light was dying, casting long corporate shadows across the endless gray cubicles. Most of the desks were clear, the chairs pushed in. It was mostly empty. I found him at the end of the aisle, a solitary figure tapping away at his keyboard under the sterile fluorescent light. When I knocked on the partition, he looked up, and his face was open, friendly. A genuine, uncomplicated smile. Greg had kept Stephanie so walled off, so isolated from her own friends, he didn't even recognize me. Can I help you? He asked, his voice pleasant. My heart was a hummingbird in my chest. I held out the thick manila envelope, the papers inside feeling heavy, toxic. This is a delivery for you, I said, my voice sounding strangely formal. It requires a signature. He took it, the smile still lingering. He chatted about the weather, something easy and meaningless, as he searched his desk for a pen. He seemed normal. He was a man signing for a package. Then he opened it. I watched the transformation. It was faster than a sunrise, more like a light being switched off. The smile didn't fade. It was erased. His face settled into a stillness so profound, so absolute. It was 1,000 times more terrifying than any rage I could have imagined. It was the stillness of a predator. His breathing changed. It became shallow, quick, audible in the dead silent office. Divorce, he said. The word wasn't a question. It was a statement, an object he was testing, feeling its weight in his mouth. He kept reading. I watched his knuckles turn bone white as his grip tightened, crushing the edges of the papers. I took a step back, my body moving before my mind, a primal instinct to get to the door. She didn't even have the courage to tell me herself. His voice was a marvel, perfectly calm, almost conversational. But it was a calm that held no peace. It was the eerie, pressurized quiet in the air just before a lightning strike. He stood up, slowly. The papers were still clenched in his fist. And in that moment, I realized how much bigger he was than me, how the space in his office had suddenly shrunk. 3 years, he said, and then he laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound that didn't reach his eyes. She sends a stranger. A vein in his temple began to pulse, a tiny, frantic drumbeat against his skin. His face was darkening, a tide of red creeping up his neck. I'm just the messenger, I said, the words sounding weak, stupid. I need to go. He walked around the desk. Not fast, but with a deliberate, measured pace that ate up the distance between us. He didn't look at me, but at the door. He was blocking my path. The favor was over. The trap was set. Did she tell you what a monster I am? He asked. The question hung in the air, thick and poisoned. He stepped closer, and I was enveloped in the smell of him. Stale coffee and something sour on his breath. My heart was no longer a hummingbird. It was a trapped bird, slamming itself against the cage of my ribs, so loud I was sure he could hear it. I don't know anything about it, I said, my voice a useless tremor. I'm just doing a favor. The word favor was the trigger. A favor? He repeated, and his hand came down on the desk with a crack that made his keyboard jump. A favor? His voice, which had been so eerily calm, was now a roar. You're helping her destroy my life as a favor. I tried to sidestep him to get to the door, but his arm shot out. He grabbed my shoulder, his fingers digging in through my shirt. It wasn't a strike, but a capture. A cold, firm finality that stopped me dead. Where is she? He demanded, his grip tightening. His face was inches from mine, the mask of the friendly husband completely gone, replaced by a raw purple rage. "Where is my wife?" "I don't know," I gasped. He squeezed harder, his thumb expertly finding the pressure point above my collarbone, sending a bolt of white-hot pain down my arm. "Don't lie to me," he hissed, and I could feel the tremors in his body, a rage so potent it was vibrating through his hand and into me. "She had to give you these. You know where she is." I insisted she'd just dropped them at my apartment, and his face went darker. He shoved me, not a violent slam, but a powerful, contemptuous push that sent me staggering backward until my shoulders hit the wall. It was a demonstration. "I can do this. I can do worse." He let go and walked back to his desk, yanking open a drawer. My blood went cold. My entire body braced for the flat, metallic glint of a weapon. He pulled something out. It was his phone. He started scrolling, his thumb moving with frantic energy, then thrust the screen in my face. Photos. Stephanie at their wedding, beaming. The two of them with their kids at Christmas, a perfect manufactured family scene. "This is my family," he said, and his voice broke, a jagged, pathetic sound. "My whole life." Then, as if a switch was flipped, the voice went flat again. Empty. "And you're helping her take it away." He threw the phone. It hit the wall beside my head and shattered, the crack of its impact echoing like a gunshot in the silent office. My breath hitched. In the hallway, I heard footsteps. Hope, sharp and sudden. Someone else was working late, but Greg didn't even glance at the door. The footsteps passed by, oblivious. The sound faded, taking my hope with it. He was staring at me with an intensity that felt like insects crawling on my skin. "You have no idea what you've started," he whispered. He picked up a paperweight from his desk, a heavy glass obelisk, probably some corporate award, and turned it over in his hands. "She thinks she can just leave," he mused. "Just take everything." With a sudden guttural roar, he spun and threw it. Not at me. Through his office window. The glass didn't just break. It exploded, showering the night air with glittering shrapnel. The sudden violence made me scream, a small choked sound. He smiled at my fear. He snatched the divorce papers from his desk and began reading them properly this time, his lips moving as he scanned each line. I watched the color of his face deepen from red to a sick, blotchy purple as he found the custody section. "She wants full custody," he whispered, disbelieving. Then he screamed it, a sound of pure animalistic agony. "Full custody of my children." He threw the papers at me, a flurry of white that scattered across the floor. He grabbed his desk chair, hoisted it over his head, and smashed it against the wall, again and again. Plastic shrapnel flew everywhere. "My kids," he panted, pacing now, his movements jerky and unpredictable. "A caged animal. She can't take my kids." He stopped, turned, and punched the wall. The drywall gave way with a dull thump, leaving a ragged hole. He looked down at his knuckles, now bloody, as if they belonged to someone else. Then he looked at me. The wildness was gone, replaced by that same terrifying calm. "I'll kill her before she takes my kids," he said. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. And that calm delivery was the most horrifying thing of all. That was it. I ran. I bolted for the door, my legs shaking. But he was faster. He lunged, slamming the door shut just as my fingers brushed the handle, and stood with his back against it. The lock clicked. The room, which had been an office, was now a cell. "You're not leaving," he said, his eyes wild but his voice perfectly, dangerously level. "Not until you tell me where she is." "We're going to call her," he said, his voice a grotesque parody of calm. "You're going to get her on the phone." He had my phone. He found Stephanie's contact and hit the call button, putting it on speaker. The silence of the ringing was deafening. When it went to her voicemail, his calmness finally fractured. He grabbed my throat, his fingers pressed into my windpipe, and the world dissolved. It wasn't pain at first. It was pressure. A sudden, silent closing of the world. My vision pulled in, the edges going fuzzy and dark, black spots dancing in the small tunnel of light left. I was dying. The thought was so simple, so quiet. I clawed at his arm, my slaps weak, pathetic, until he loosened his grip just enough for me to drag in a single, ragged, burning gasp of air. He scrolled through my phone with his other hand, his thumb pressing harder into my collarbone, pinning me to the wall. He found her mother's number and called, leaving a message that curdled my blood. A rant about custody, about how Stephanie's mom would never see her daughter alive again. He was ranting. Lost in his own rage and between gasps, I coughed out something that sounded like Maple Street. He stopped. The silence was absolute. "What did you say?" I shook my head, pretending it was a cough, but he grabbed my jaw, forcing my face toward his. "Is that where she is?" He squeezed my throat again, and this time I knew I wouldn't be able to fight. I nodded frantically, a desperate, silent lie to buy a single second of air. His hand tightened, demanding the address, and I thought I was going to pass out when we both heard it. Footsteps. Solid. Heavy. They stopped right outside. A sharp knock. "Everything okay in there?" a man's voice called out. Greg's hand shot off my throat. I crumpled to my knees, gasping, air scraping my raw esophagus. "This is Christopher Babb from Building Security," the voice said. "We got a report of breaking glass." Greg was instantly transformed. He cleared his throat, his voice becoming the man I first saw, the friendly colleague. "Everything's fine," he called, his tone light, almost amused. "Just an accident during a conference call. Got a little heated, I'll pay for any damages." "I need to come in and check," Christopher said, his voice firm. My heart screamed. "Open the door. Open the door." "That's not necessary," Greg said, his voice pure liquid charm. "I've already called maintenance about the window. I'll file a report in the morning." There was a long, terrible pause. "Okay," Christopher said finally. "But please keep it down. There are still people working." The footsteps moved away. The silence that fell was heavier, more final than before. Greg turned and locked the deadbolt. The click was the sound of the last door in the world closing. He dragged me to a chair and pushed me into it. He started pacing, muttering about lawyers, about custody, his bloody knuckles flexing. I asked to use the bathroom, a desperate lie, thinking I could lock myself in. He grabbed my wrist, so hard I felt the bones grind together. "You're not going anywhere." I cried out, and he smiled at the sound. He picked up my phone again, called Stephanie, and let it go to voicemail. And then he began to talk, his voice chillingly calm, describing in meticulous, surgical detail what he would do to her when he found her, how he would break her fingers one by one, how he would turn the kids against her, how he'd make sure everyone knew she was crazy. He stared at me the entire time, making sure I knew the threats were for me, too. Then, a sound. A faint, annoying beeping from somewhere in the building. A door held open too long. It broke his monologue. He moved to the broken window, agitated, trying to see if security was coming back, and I saw it. On the wall, 10 feet away, the fire alarm. It was my only voice. My only way out? I didn't think. I just moved. I exploded from the chair and ran. He roared, spinning around, but I was already there. I slammed my hand down on the lever. The world exploded. A shriek so loud it hurt my ears, a pulsing electronic scream that was my scream. His face went from confusion to a murderous fury. I yanked the door open. The deadbolt, he'd unlocked it to listen, and sprinted into the hallway. "You're going to regret this," he bellowed, his feet pounding the carpet right behind me. I hit the stairwell door with my shoulder and practically fell down the first flight, my hands scraping the concrete railing. My lungs burned, my legs shook. I could hear him just seconds behind me, his longer legs taking the stairs 3 at a time, cursing. I burst through the final exit door into the cold night air and the beautiful, beautiful sound of sirens, the fire trucks responding to the alarm. Christopher Babb, the security guard, was standing by the door. He saw me fly out, then saw Greg emerge right behind me. I screamed, "He attacked me! Call the cops!" and pulled my collar down, showing him the raw red marks on my throat. Greg tried to lie, to say I was overreacting, but the bruises were already turning purple. The police arrived within minutes. The aftermath was a different kind of violence. Cold, bright, and systematic. An officer named Morrison sat me in his car, the door open, while he took photos of my neck with his phone. Click. Turn your head. Click. Your wrist. Click. I watched them put Greg, the man from the barbecues, in handcuffs and led him away. They drove me to the emergency room. The nurse, Michelle Ashby, was kind, but her words were clinical, brutal. She took more photos, holding a small ruler next to the bruises on my neck and wrists. She checked my eyes, my mouth, the tissue in my throat. Strangulation, she explained. Her voice gentle as she documented the damage, is one of the biggest predictors of future lethal violence in domestic situations. I finally got my phone back and called Stephanie from the waiting room. She sobbed, apologizing over and over. "I never thought he'd hurt someone else," she whispered. I listened to the ER sounds, the beeps and the quiet announcements, the words of the nurse echoing in my head. Predictor of lethal violence. He hadn't just been trying to scare me. He had been practicing. The escape wasn't over. It had just begun. The days that followed were a cold, sterile blur of official procedures. I gave my formal statement to a detective named James Barnhart, the words feeling thin and hollow as I repeated them under the glare of his office lights. A woman from Victim Services, Karen Arrington, sat with me and mapped out a safety plan. It was a checklist of paranoia. Change my routes to work, check my car for tracking devices, install new locks on my apartment door. I did it all. I bought 3 new deadbolts, my hand shaking so much I could barely hold the screwdriver. For one night I slept, then my phone rang. A blocked number. I didn't answer. A voicemail icon appeared. I pressed play and my stomach dropped. It was just breathing at first, a slow, intimate sound in my ear. And then his voice. Quiet, calm, and seeping with the same cold confidence from his office. "This isn't over," I called Detective Barnhart, my voice trembling, demanding to know how this was possible. He called back an hour later. Greg had made bail, the cage was gone, but the monster was free. And he knew my number. The office, the place of the attack, became the first casualty. My coworkers' gazes were a new kind of assault, a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. They whispered when I walked by. Then the whispers found a voice. A Facebook post appeared, using my professional headshot from the company website. The post was a masterpiece of poison. It painted me as a vindictive homewrecker, an obsessed mistress who had been having an affair with Greg for months. When he tried to end it, I had retaliated by helping his wife steal his kids. It was brilliant. It wasn't just a lie. It was a new narrative, and I was the villain. Comments flooded in, calling me every name imaginable, making threats. I reported it, my hands shaking. Facebook replied with a sterile automated message. The post did not violate their community standards. He was controlling the story. I was just a character in it. I deleted my accounts. The digital assault was followed by a physical one. I walked out to the parking garage after work, my keys clenched between my fingers, and saw my car sitting low. All 4 tires were flat, with long, deliberate cuts slashed down the sides. Tucked under the windshield wiper was a piece of paper. In block letters, it read, "Liars get what they deserve." The garage's security cameras, I was told, didn't cover that section. The walls were closing in, but the final breach was the worst. An email arrived from an address I didn't recognize. No subject, just an attachment. I opened it. It was a photo of my apartment door, taken that morning. My Amazon package was sitting on the doormat. The message was just 2 words. Nice place. He knew where I lived. The new locks, the deadbolts, they were a joke. I was the one who had to leave. Karen Arrington found me emergency housing at a shelter. My new home was a studio apartment with bars on the windows. He was free and I was the one in a cell. The war of escalation continued. Greg showed up at my work, demanding to see me, shouting about a misunderstanding until security dragged him out. My boss, with a look of profound discomfort, suggested I work from home. I was no longer an employee. I was a liability. There was a moment of hope. The security footage from Greg's office building came through. It was grainy, but undeniable. It showed him grabbing me, throwing the chair, punching the wall. He was arrested again, this time for assault, criminal threats, and witness intimidation. The judge set bail at $50,000. His brother posted it that same afternoon. At the bail hearing, I watched his lawyer paint him as an upstanding community member, a father distraught over his children. The judge agreed to release him, this time with a GPS ankle monitor. As Greg walked out of the courtroom, a free man, he turned. He looked directly at me, and he smirked. That smirk was the key. He knew the ankle monitor was a farce. It only told the police where he was. It didn't stop him from sending others. My friends started calling, casual, just checking in, asking where I was staying. A blue sedan followed me for 4 turns, and when I drove to the police station, it turned out to be one of his softball teammates, who claimed it was just a coincidence. The paranoia Karen had warned me about wasn't paranoia. It was an accurate assessment of my new reality. The final, sickening proof came when I took my car for an oil change. The mechanic called me into the bay. "Ma'am, you need to see this." Tucked up under the wheel well, covered in weeks of road grime, was a small black box. A GPS tracker. My blood ran cold. The ankle monitor was his leash. This was mine. He hadn't been guessing. He hadn't been lucky. He had been watching my every move for weeks. The slashed tires. The photo of my door. He knew my new routes, my schedules, my safe shelter. His friends weren't just checking in. They were his network. I was living in a cage he had built, and he was holding the only key, watching me pace. The prosecutor called with the deal. The word itself felt like a betrayal. 3 years probation. Mandatory anger management counseling, a 5-year protective order, and no jail time. Stephanie was on speakerphone, listening from her new undisclosed location. Her silence was a hollow void. The prosecutor called it a solid deal that guaranteed accountability. We both knew it was a compromise, a mathematical calculation of risk. If we went to trial, Greg might get prison time, or he could walk free entirely. This deal was a piece of paper that said he was guilty. It was also a piece of paper that let him go. We took the deal. The system wasn't built for justice. It was built to clear a docket. We were just a case file to be closed. The day after Greg pled guilty to assault, a certified letter arrived at my shelter. It was from his lawyer. Greg, the man who had just admitted his guilt, was threatening to sue me for defamation, for intentional infliction of emotional distress, and for his lost wages. My hands shook as I read it. My savings were already gone, evaporated by missed days of work and security cameras. My credit cards were maxed out. Now I had to hire a lawyer to defend me from the man who attacked me, and the retainer was $2,000 I didn't have. The costs kept piling up. At work, my boss called me in. The promotion I had spent 2 years working toward was given to someone else. I had missed too much work. I was unreliable. The whispers from the Facebook post had never fully died. The lie had stuck. I was no longer a colleague. I was a liability. The probation was a piece of paper. The protective order was a piece of paper. The final proof of their worthlessness came 3 weeks later, at a gas station. I was pumping gas when a man I'd never seen walked up, his presence an immediate violation of my space. He smelled like cigarettes. He said his name was Mike, a friend of Greg's from work. He just wanted to talk about second chances, about how Greg was a good guy who made one mistake. And then he said, his voice casual, "You usually get gas on Tuesday mornings, not Saturday. This new route you're taking through downtown must add at least 10 minutes to your commute, right?" My blood turned to ice. It wasn't a question. It was a message. The tracker was gone, but the surveillance was not. He leaned against my car door, casually blocking my escape. I took his picture and he backed off, but he stood there watching as I drove away. 8 months after I walked into that office, my life was a fortress I had built brick by brick. I moved to a new apartment with a doorman and key fobs. I changed my phone number twice. I never took the same route to work. My social circle had withered. Friends drifted away, exhausted by the new, guarded person I had become. the one who scanned every room for exits and flinched at every sudden knock. Even Stephanie and I had to let each other go. We were a trauma bond, and it wasn't healthy. We agreed to text once a month just to check in. The favor had cost me my job, my savings, my friendships, and my sense of self. I started seeing a therapist Karen found, one who specialized in violent crime survivors. She helped me understand that the hypervigilance wasn't a sickness. It was a scar. It's the new permanent architecture of my life. I wasn't the same person who had agreed to deliver those papers. That person was gone. I am still here, still breathing, but I am living a new life, built on the wreckage of the old one. A life that will never, ever feel completely safe again. I sit in my new apartment. It's clean, sterile, and anonymous. The doorman knows me as a number. The key fob registers my entry. These are the sounds of my new life. Not the creak of a floorboard or the rustle of leaves, but the electronic click of a lock, the digital beep of an alarm system. I check it 3 times before I go to bed. The hypervigilance hasn't faded. It's just settled. It's part of my breathing now. I map the exits in every building. I park near the entrance at the grocery store. I don't wear headphones in public. I've learned to build my life around the scar, rather than pretending it isn't there. It's strange, the questions that haunt you in the 2 a.m. silence. Not the big ones, but the small, sharp ones. Was it the moment he stood up, or the moment his smile vanished? When does a person become a monster? Or were they always one, just wearing a very, very good mask? What is the true cost of a favor? And what do you do when the system designed to protect you simply can't? When a piece of paper, a restraining order, a probation agreement, is just a flimsy shield against a man who sees all rules as mere suggestions? Greg lost his job. He has a criminal record. But I'm the one who lives in a fortress. I'm the one who lost a promotion. I'm the one whose friendships dissolved. Who really paid the price? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Every follow and comment is the fuel that helps me bring more powerful stories to light. And don't hesitate to share your own story in the comments below. I'm always here to listen.